What it do, cuckolds? It's your boy, the hater, up in this mic. You know what I'm saying? And it's time for the SmackDown review. Of course, we're going to go over it segment by segment. However, I want to point something out, right? Some good things definitely happen on this episode of SmackDown, namely the TLC match. That's always a treat. However, just because something good happened doesn't mean that the product is good overall, as I will illustrate in this video. So let's start out with segment one. Cena comes out and Orton tells him he is a bad guy, right? This is despite the fact that Orton RKO'd Cena seemingly for no reason other than jealousy and wanting to be WWE champion. A face shouldn't be doing this, but whatever. It's Randy Orton, so we'll tolerate it, right? Orton basically goes out there and says that, like, Cena needs to have children, which was weird. But whatever. Cena says he doesn't want to have children. Basically, the reason being that he doesn't already have children, that he's been raising everybody, right? Which I thought was clever, but then he keeps going on and on about it, right? And it's like, bro, at the end of the day, all you did was wrestle, right? Cena raised us, quote unquote, to the same extent that Gilbert raised us in the 90s, or the same extent that, you know, like S.A. Rios raised us. Now, granted, Cena obviously is a much bigger deal, so, you know, people will take their cues from Cena, and that's what he was getting at. He was basically saying, like, I had this cleaned up image so that people would follow a good example, which Randy Orton acknowledges and says, like, you know, you can't tell me that meant nothing, right? Cena then reiterates that it meant nothing. Whatever, right? Anyways, Orton says, if you're like the last champ, because Cena basically says that, like, he's going to ruin wrestling. Orton says, you're not going to ruin wrestling because wrestling has, like, you know, provided for my family since I was born, and it will until the day that I die. So that's kind of an interesting, like, take on the feud, right? But then Orton says, let's wrestle tonight. Now, obviously, that's not going to happen. We already know that, just conceptually, right? But it should have, right? And that's one of the things that I want to talk about. It's this idea that no big matches are allowed to happen on SmackDown, right? I mean, obviously, we had, you know, the TLC match, which is obviously a big deal. But, you know, other than that, it's like, and that's not really a big deal either. I'll talk about that more later, but we're never going to have like a big match, right? That's a good match, but it's not a big match, as I will prove later on in the video. Anyways, they're not going to have the match, obviously. Orton looks like a complete idiot, right? Because Cena's burying him, saying that, like, you know, basically, like, Orton doesn't deserve anything, and that, you know, Orton's, like, generations, like 3 generations or whatever, are going to get erased because, like, Cena is going to be the real champion, and the title that comes after Cena is not going to be a real title, so who gives a shit if you win it, right? Cena still says, like, if you're lucky enough to win it, and it's like, dude, you just said the title is unimportant, so why would him winning it make him lucky? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, if it's a meaningless belt, then who cares who's the champion? Anyways, that's also, like, kind of silly, just because the concept is that you're the WWE champion, you're the champion that the WWE recognizes, you know? So, with all that being said, like, it doesn't matter if Cena goes away. Like, the title that the WWE recognizes is the title that matters, number one. 2, we also have, like, the Jey Uso title, which is completely being buried by this Cena storyline. Because Cena's saying, I'm the last real champion. He doesn't even acknowledge the reality that Jey Uso is, like, technically, I suppose, a world champion, even though, you know, he clearly isn't because it's a bullshit title. But whatever, right? After this, Cena attacks Orton, and he goes for the title shot, you know, like, where he hits him with the title. And obviously, Orton ducks it and RKOs him predictably. And then Orton poses. And, you know, you can take a moment to recognize that Orton is an absolute hoss, right? Orton is exactly what a star should look like. You know what I mean? And this is Orton, like, now. You know, this wasn't always the case. There was a time when he first debuted where he was, like, this skinny kid. You know, like, not skinny. He was never, like, skinny. But, you know, he didn't look as massive as he does now. That's for sure, right? Orton is just, like, he's aging well in terms of his physique. He looks great. He can still wrestle, etc., etc. And, you know, when you see people like Tony D'Angelo and Opa Femi, and you try to convince me that these guys are going to be stars, you know, that's where I have to, like, you know, call out the bull, you know. Randy Orton's physique when he started is, like, the minimum requirement, in my opinion, for what a WWE champion should look like, right? So, like, you know, like Trick Williams, for example, has the physique. He doesn't have any of the other attributes, but he has the physique at least, right? So anyways, this segment takes a fucking eternity. And now we go to our next situation, right? Tiffany Stratton comes out, and she cuts a boring ass generic promo, right? She basically says, oh, people said I was going to be the next Charlotte Flair. And while there will never be another Charlotte Flair, there is only one Tiffany Stratton. And she said that like we're supposed to be impressed, right? There's only one. It would be like Taka Michinoku coming out and being like, there's only one Taka Michinoku. You know, like who cares if there's only one Tiffany Stratton? It doesn't matter that you have a unique name. You have no personality and no character. So Bianca Belair is like the exact same thing. You know, it would be the same thing as if Bianca Belair came out and said, there's only one Bianca Belair. You know, yeah, technically it's true, but nobody gives a shit. Same thing with Tiffany Stratton. You know, neither her nor Bianca are exciting. The only reason Tiffany Stratton isn't getting booed yet is because despite the fact that they want to present her as a big deal, she's still young and new. Bianca Belair is older and not novel as a character. She's been around doing nothing for like 10 years. You know? But anyways, that's what happens. This prompts Jade Cargill to come out, right? And they have a match, which was quite surprising. Now, here's the problem with this match, right? Although the match was entertaining, you know, for what it was, and Jade Cargill should be a star, the problem is, before the match starts, Joe Tessitore, I don't even know what he was thinking when he said this, but he was like, you know, I completely forgot one of the matches. I'll talk about it later. Cucks. He's like, you know, Tiffany Stratton, like, and Bianca Belair is a dream match or something to that effect, right? And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? How can this be a dream match? First of all, both women are in the roster, right? A dream match implies either that someone amazing and new has come around and now you want to see dream matches that you could only dream of, right? So, for example, Sting versus The Undertaker, right? They're two guys that were in different companies, and now Sting is in the WWE, so people are like, oh shit, that's a dream match. Kurt Angle, Samoa Joe is a dream match, right? Because they were in two different companies, and you could only dream to see this match. Jade Cargill and Tiffany Stratton are two women in the SmackDown women's roster. This is a match we should be seeing all the time, you know? Or maybe not all the time, obviously, but we should see this match with no problems, you know? But he's like, it's a dream match. Furthermore, how can it be a dream match? Jade Cargill has been in the company for like a year. Tiffany Stratton has been in the company for like 3 years or whatever, 4 years. You know, and it's like, it doesn't make any sense for this to be considered a dream match. It's just stupid. But because it's a match where there isn't a jobber involved, it has to automatically be considered a dream match, right? Nobody would say that like Garza versus, I don't know, Shawn Michaels, right, would be a dream match because Garza is a jobber. But if you had like, let's just say Shawn Michaels came out of retirement, you put him up against anybody, you know, Shawn Michaels versus Sami Zayn, they'd be like, it's a dream match. No, it isn't, right? And that's the problem. The problem is that the standard for dream match has gone from two legends who have never wrestled before. Then it went down to one legend, one jobber, right? Now, the new standard is as long as there's no jobbers in the match, it's a dream match, right? So like Dolph Ziggler versus, I don't know, like, let's think of someone who's a mid-card. There's too many jobbers, to be fair. But, you know, like Dolph Ziggler versus Kevin Owens, they might be like, oh, it's a dream match. Like, that's not a dream match. You know what I mean? But anyways, the match is whatever. Nobody cares because Naomi comes and ruins the match, which ruins the entire segment, right? I want to see a definitive winner. I want to see Tiffany Stratton beat someone worthwhile, you know, now that she beat Charlotte. Before this, I completely forgot. Right? Around the 45-minute mark of the match, a very forgettable thing happened. The debut of Fraxium, which is Nathan Frazier, who apparently is from England, and Axiom, right? And they're going to wrestle, guess who? Everybody's favorite jobber tag team, Los Garza. So there's absolutely no point in having this match. It's a competitive match, it's a long match, and it's a decent match. Los Garza do like their finisher, the MTY, which is like a stupid ass like name, the Monterrey. It's like the airport code for Monterrey. Like, don't try to make it cool. You're not cool. You're both dorks. But they do it. It's basically like this double overhead press slam, but they do it from the top rope, which in my opinion should just end the match. And it got me thinking, I'm like, wow, you know, how great would it be if like they do this just like once, right? Where they have a debuting tag team that's had success in the lower leagues, whether that be NXT or TNA with the Motor City Machine Guns, and then they have them go up against a jobber tag team like Los Garza, and then have Los Garza win. You know what I mean? How great would that be? That'd be amazing. You'd be like, oh shit, I didn't expect this to happen at all. Los Garza's not getting a push. And there's absolutely no reason why Los Garza, you know, deserve the push any less than Fraxium. Fraxium is a terrible tag team. Now, both of these guys are very good athletes. right? And I really enjoy their matches. You know, I really enjoy Nathan Frazier at this point. He's grown on me. And even Axiom, who's just like a random guy with like, you know, like a B-level moveset. Like his finishing move is just a jumping kick, you know? Nathan Frazier carries this team. However, right, I don't care about the tag team, right? I can enjoy their matches the same way that I enjoy Motor City Machine Guns matches, but I don't care about them because they are just two guys. Right? They're no different than Los Garza. At the very least, Los Garza are part of a faction and they're Latinos and they have some character that corresponds to how they're presented. They're proud to be from Monterrey. They're cousins. They got something there. But Fraxium has nothing. They're just two guys that wrestle together. And while that's interesting to some, it is not interesting to your boy, right? I don't like it. I don't enjoy it. And quite frankly, the predictable Fraxium wins situation is what it is. Los Garza are going nowhere, even though both these guys are talented in-ring workers, right? Again, I'm not saying they should be pushed to the moon, but there's no reason why Los Garza couldn't have been, for example, in the TLC match, right? It would have been much better, I think, even though it was already excellent. Let's move on to the next segment. Obviously, the next segment, we already did it, you know, prematurely. We talked about Tiffany Stratton and all that shit. And then we got into the next segment after that. Fatu comes out, right? Fatu is dressed like Rosie from Jamal and Rosie, the 3-minute warning, right? He looks like a total jobber. Don't forget that Rosie was a guy who's like 400 pounds, rest in peace, but 400 pounds, who lost clean to Gregory Helms, who is obviously an underrated wrestler, but nevertheless, right, this guy was a jobber. Then all of a sudden, Fatu is like the same thing, except smaller, and he's supposed to be this big deal. It doesn't make any sense, and I don't like it. You know what I mean? Now, Fatu cuts a well-executed promo because this guy has passion, right? His delivery is passionate. However, the promo is lame because all he says is dumb shit. You know, he's like, oh, Jacob Fatu, I'm here now. You know, I would have done it with or without you, Solo. Then he goes on to his shit catchphrases, which culminate with, you know what I mean? Which is like, that wasn't cool in the year 2000. It sure as shit ain't going to be cool in the year 2025. You might as well just say, yabba dabba do, instead of, you know what I mean? It's the same thing. It's the same concept. It's stupid as shit. Anyways, he's just proclaiming excitement. He's not even asking, do you know what I mean? It's just like it's a catchphrase with no logic. It really is like yabba dabba do, right? It's just something he says that's associated with him because, you know what I mean? Doesn't mean like I'm excited to do something. It means, you know what I'm saying? It's like that, right? But he doesn't say it like that. He just says it as like the ender of his promo. You know what I mean? Whatever. It is what it is. Let him go with it, right? LA Knight comes out, says that he said he's going to BFT him. He BFT'd him. However, Jacob Fatu won. He wants a rematch. Then Drew McIntyre comes out, obviously affirming that he is now a full-blown mid-carder. Right? He explains, however, while he's asserting himself as a mid-carder, he explains by talking about himself that he wanted to challenge Cena, but Orton has jumped the line, right? Well, Orton also won. You know what I mean? Oh, his Mania match. Granted, he won against the TNA World Champion, but he's also Orton, right? That's obviously a bigger match, which has nothing to do with the fact that Drew McIntyre beat Damian Priest, who nobody cares about. Nevertheless, Drew McIntyre says that he wants to fight the biggest, toughest guy, seen as a joke now, so he doesn't give a shit about the world title because Cena has it, right? And also because Randy Orton jumped the line, so he's saying he wants to fight Mr. You know what I mean himself, right? Whatever. LA Knight says, look, you're boring everyone to death. LA Knight isn't wrong, but he's not right because everything that Drew McIntyre said is at least fact, right? He explained that like basically he's being held down, and in kayfabe you could make that argument. Nevertheless, it was what it was. He calls, this is, what's it called? LA Knight at some point, Drew McIntyre calls Orton and the Bloodline Nepo babies. He ain't wrong. Now, let's be honest. Randy Orton is superior to Drew McIntyre, right? He's a Nepo baby because that's how he got his foot in the door. But there's absolutely no doubt that if Randy Orton pursued it, maybe he would have given up like he did when he was in the Marines. But if he pursued it, there's no doubt that Randy Orton would become, you know, like a WWE superstar. Maybe he'd be like more of like a Drew McIntyre than a Randy Orton, but he would make it because he's massive, he's charismatic, he's good looking, and he can wrestle, relatively speaking, right? However, the Samoans, none of them would make it. Let's be real. If they weren't part of the Anoa'i family, the annoying family, none of these guys would make it. It's just like, it's guaranteed. There's no way in hell that Solo Sikoa is getting a WWE contract if he's not part of that family. right? He looks like shit. Jacob Fatu looks like shit. They would never make it, you know? And they're not really that impressive anyways. But whatever, I digress, right? This leads eventually to Drew McIntyre versus LA Knight, right? So let's just get through that now. There's some other stuff that happened, but since we're talking about this and we're not doing it like in order, let's get to it. The match happens. The match is interesting because it's two big guys that are not mid-carders. I'm surprised Testator didn't call this a dream match. Nevertheless, the match doesn't end when Solo Sikoa comes in and interferes because the referee doesn't notice it. Then after this, Damian Priest comes out and attacks Drew McIntyre, thereby like making Drew McIntyre the winner. Wade Barrett's like, I don't know if we have an official winner. It's like, what do you mean? The rules are the rules, right? One guy wins, one guy loses, and a DQ win is still a win, so you become the number one contender. So now, presumably, it's Drew McIntyre versus Fatu, right? Which is just laughable, right? Laughable. Like, Drew McIntyre would butcher this guy in 3 seconds if he wanted to. Oh, hater, what are you talking about? Jacob Fatu went to prison. Jacob Fatu's from the streets. Shut the fuck up. Drew McIntyre would lay this guy out in 3 seconds. You know what I mean? Enough of this, oh, I'm a tough guy because I say I'm a tough guy. Shut the fuck up. Drew McIntyre would beat the shit out of every Samoan that's ever lived, probably including The Rock as well. Have you seen Drew McIntyre? Come on. Anyways, with all that being said, the match ends again with a DQ. That's 2 matches today with a DQ. And I will take this moment to talk about something that they put up on the screen. They're like, tonight's results, and there's 4 matches. 2 of them were like DQ or no contest, right? Like, for some reason, one was a no contest, the other one was a DQ. But hey, who makes the rules, right? When Naomi attacks Jade Cargill, it's a no contest. When, what's his face? When Damian Priest attacks Drew McIntyre, whom he chokeslams, right? That, for some reason, becomes a DQ. Hey, I don't really care. That's not that important. I don't make any distinctions between DQ and no contest, right? Who cares? The only time it would matter is in a situation like the Drew McIntyre match, where the winner is, you know, there's stakes, right? The winner gets a U.S. title shot. Wade Barrett did a good job putting over the U.S. title during this match. I did like that. He was like, these guys are bad. They're bad over the weekend. Bad and bruised, right? But, like, you know, they're still here, basically, you know, because the U.S. title means something. Next up, we have an impassioned Miz promo. Miz is wearing all white. Before this, he and Carmelo are talking backstage. Carmelo is saying that he feels like he's 7 feet tall, like Andre the Giant, because he won the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. I would like to see the Andre the Giant Jobber Battle Royal be elevated with kind of like how the King of the Ring is elevated, right? I would like to see Carmelo Hayes like take this and turn it into like a half gimmick. Not that he thinks he's Andre the Giant, but that he's proud of winning this this accolade, right? Instead of just leaving it backstage. Miz basically tells him backstage that he's gonna come out there and get his own, right? So he goes out and he starts cutting up a very impassioned and correct promo. He says, The Miz has been part of WrestleMania forever, right? Well, sometimes he was on the pre-show, like when I went to see the WrestleMania in Jersey, he was in the pre-show against Wade Barrett, but he beat Wade Barrett, and he became the Intercontinental Champion. The Intercontinental title was in the pre-show, so it's still like a big deal, right? But he says, he's like, I've been part of, you know, basically every WrestleMania, and I'm being held down, right? I'm not given opportunities. Rey Mysterio gets injured, he says, and instead of like picking me, he picks a guy who's been here for like 2 weeks, Rey Fenix. You know, he's like, what do I have to do? Put on a mask and call myself Rey? Now, obviously, it would make no sense for Rey Mysterio to pick The Miz, right? He had to pick Rey Fenix. It had to be a luchador for storyline purposes, you know, because it would be weird if it was like El Grande Americano versus Miz. Like, what the fuck is that, right? But Miz is right. Every WrestleMania, Miz has had not only a match, right? He's typically had a prominent match. So either it's been a title match, like the Intercontinental title match, which may end up on the pre-show, or he's had other awesome moments, like him and Morrison versus like Damian Priest and Bad Bunny, right? Him versus Shane. The list goes on and on. You understand what I'm saying? Miz has had a permanent spot on the card. This time he doesn't have it. He also points out that Orton, this was weird because he was like, Orton wrestles like Joe Hendry, right? And he's like, but Orton did an open challenge, so theoretically, Miz could have come out, you know? He didn't, but it is what it is. Miz does make a good point, and his point is, even though, like, you know, I tend to somewhat like Joe Hendry, because I find him to have, like, a unique look, and he's got some pretty good moves, the facts are the facts. Joe Hendry will never be a megastar like The Miz is, or like The Miz was, right? Joe Hendry is just like a sing-along gimmick. He's no different than Nakamura, you know what I mean? He's more charismatic than Nakamura, perhaps, but he's just there. He got himself over, not through wrestling, but through crowd manipulation. Now, I don't care about that, to each his own, but it doesn't change the fact that what Miz said was the truth, right? The Miz is like, this guy is just like a TikTok dance. You know, he's 100% right. You know, what happened to like actual superstars like The Miz? You know, I know a lot of people don't respect The Miz, but in my opinion, obviously Miz is like a first ballot, if we want to use that dumbass term, Hall of Famer, you know? And that's just a fact, motherfuckers. The Miz deserves better than this. The Miz should be in a similar spot as Randy Orton, right? He should be this upper mid-carder. You know, The Miz should be like, at the very minimum, he should be like in the same spot as Sheamus was before he like left this time around, right? He is still good. He can still go. And when Miz was winning world titles, Drew McIntyre was pretending to play the air guitar. Not much has changed, motherfuckers. So Miz should be fully ingratiated, in my opinion, at minimum in the mid-card scene. If it were up to me, Miz would be like, you know, for example, at Elimination Chamber, Miz would be in like every Elimination Chamber. He would have like a Kane role, right? Like a role like Kane did in the Attitude Era, where like, all right, you know Kane's not going to be champion because it's just not his time, I guess. But there's always a threat that Kane could be the champion, right? You don't think Kane's going to win the Royal Rumble when it's him and Stone Cold, but there's always a chance, right? That's the place where I want to see Miz. Kind of like in the Dolph Ziggler role before Dolph Ziggler became a jobber, you know? Basically the role that he was in for like the vast majority of his career. Nevertheless, as Miz is talking about this, he gets interrupted by Alistair Black, the returning Alistair Black. Now, I'm going to take a moment here, and I'm going to Google on my phone The Miz and determine that he is 44 years old. Now, I'm going to do the same with Alistair Black, who is 39. So there's only a 5-year difference. Alistair Black is never going to make it. He's never going to be this massive star. Alistair Black, in my opinion, even though I understand why people like him, he's interesting looking, right? And his moves are somewhat unique. I mean, you know, he does a spinning kick, but nobody else does a spinning kick finish, right? He does like things that are fun to watch. I don't have anything against Alistair Black. I really enjoyed playing as Alistair Black in the WWE 2K games when he was around. However, Alistair Black, much like Rusev, he's being treated the exact same way. He just comes in, beats up somebody that doesn't matter, unfortunately. In this case, it's The Miz, right? Alistair Black represents to me the worst of wrestling. Not because of who he is, but because of what he represents, like I just said, right? Him and Rusev both, right? They're these two guys who Vince McMahon, we were told for years, Vince McMahon didn't understand these guys, right? He didn't understand Alistair Black, right? Vince McMahon was someone that wasn't supposed to push people like Alistair Black and Rusev, right? Then they go to AEW, people are like, finally, they're in a place where they'll be appreciated, where Alistair Black and Rusev can be themselves. And we all saw how that worked out. They had mediocre runs, like Rusev didn't even have a run. They were just a complete waste of time and money. They proved in my opinion, conclusively, that they, along with Cesaro and many others like them, have no draw ability, they have no presence, they have no charisma, and they have nothing to add. So what does Triple H do? Well, let's take the guy who's done fucking nothing for 5 years and the other guy who's done fucking nothing for 5 years, and you know what? Let's bring them both back. All right, here it is. Let's see what Alistair Black's going to do. Probably fuck all. Anyways, but I mean, I guess he could put on some good matches with like Fatu or something. I don't give a fuck, right? After this, we have the main event, which was the TLC match. Obviously, the TLC match was excellent. No doubt about it. However, here's the problem with the TLC match, right? And I'm going to make this quick because this is a problem that needs to be addressed in another video, right? The TLC match was one of the best matches of the week. Like, easily, right? They had some cool spots. They had some spots that we had seen. They had some spots that we rarely see. And they even had some novel spots. Like what's it called? The skull and bones from the apron, or from the ring, I guess, to a table to the outside was pretty cool. Now, the problem is this, right? It's hard to get behind this match because this match should have been at WrestleMania, right? For example, you have a match that involves Lyra Valkyria. Why not remove that match and Becky Lynch and put this match instead? People would talk about it. This would get casual viewers interested. Becky Lynch does not get casual viewers interested. Becky Lynch is just someone that can serve as a reward for the neckbeard fans. The ones that are like, oh, I got to see Becky Lynch, like that girl that was crying, that leg beard that was crying. Nothing against her, but you know what I mean. Why are you crying? It's Becky Lynch. Anyways, that girl was crying because Becky Lynch, and I get it, whatever. She cares about Becky Lynch. She wants to see Becky Lynch, etc., etc. I'm sure she's a sweet young lady. But the point is, I think even that girl would have preferred to watch this match at WrestleMania, right? This match deserved a big audience. Now, the other side of the equation is it's not just the match itself, right? It's the presentation. And the presentation is such, right, where, if you think about it, kakwads, we find ourselves in this odd situation, right, where whether we like it or not, we are what we are, right? We are what we are. And everyone in this match is what they are. And they are jobbers, right? The fact that the Street Profits are the tag team champions is completely irrelevant when the tag team champions cannot get a spot on the card at WrestleMania. You see what I'm saying? Like, nobody in this match was involved in WrestleMania. So why should I care? The WWE has told me, they've conditioned me, they've signaled to me that nobody here is important. So why do I care about them now? The way I see it is it's the same thing as if you had Funaki versus S.A. Rios versus Dean Malenko versus Scotty 2 Hotty, right? In a hardcore match that blew the roof off the arena, but then nobody cared because we have in this match Scotty 2 Hotty, Dean Malenko, whoever the fuck I mentioned, S.A. Rios, Funaki's cool, but you know what I'm saying. Basically, everyone that I mentioned, honestly, is better than everyone that was in this match. But anyways, that's the idea, right? WWE has robbed us once again. While the match is good, it cannot save the WWE, right? In fact, I would argue that it exposes the WWE. And with that being said, the haters gotta go, cucks. So take care of yourselves.